Hi, if you or anyone you know is affected with diabetes, this video is for you. If you're looking to lose weight or fat and to get healthy, this video is for you. If you are looking for motivation and willpower to get out of the bed, this video is for you. I'm extremely happy to introduce Mr. Malcolm Drego, a retired Navy captain. At the age of 66, Malcolm is on a successful path to reverse his diabetes. Malcolm is from Talegaon, a place in Pune, Maharashtra. Malcolm spent 27 years in Merchant Navy and captained several vessels till he chose to retire and settle with his family in New Zealand. After that, he has worked in a broad spectrum of industries. But all the change also meant very little time or attention to personal well being. Some years ago, he got diagnosed with diabetes and IBS. It went to such a point that doctors recommended him to be dependent on insulin and other harmful drugs. But then he decided to make some positive lifestyle changes, which he brought about through extensive study and self experimentation with correct science. And now he has almost reversed his diabetes. All this has had a profound impact on his overall health and wellness. Here we discuss his journey. Let's welcome Mr. Malcolm Drego on the HealthSpan show. So let's welcome Malcolm Drego on the show. Welcome,
Thank you for
Malcolm.
having me.
Yeah, welcome, Malcolm. So we know, I mean, we have seen your background now in the initial video, but now if you really tell that about your story, about how being healthier has made an impact on your life and your health, could you please tell us that?
Sure, sure. And to talk about today is it's probably uh, important that I actually give you just a quick run through
Yeah.
of because I've been moving in terms of health and wellness through several stages. So very quickly, I mean, my childhood was in Talego, a typical village environment. We grew a lot of the vegetables in our backyard. We had access to fresh vegetables all the time. Uh, Again, coming from a very mediocre family, no access to any of the luxuries of chocolates and things like that. Being in Talega, there's very limited amount of stuff in those days. This is mid 60s, and so by default, we looking back, we had a very healthy life. And then about 17, I got into the merchant navy, started my training, and then went out to sea. And as you know, as with sailors, our life is not particularly ideal. There was a lot of drinking and
Yeah.
smoking.
Yeah.
Being young, not really worried about what we ate, and but there was fresh air and activity that kept us going. And 27 years of my life was in that type of lifestyle, and then finally moved on to a life at New Zealand. And that's when things started changing for me. And I was 45 years when I came into New Zealand. By 47, I was diagnosed with pre-diabetes, and very, I think in a year's time it was full blown, and it got escalated. And 5 years ago, it came to a point where I had to take some drastic action. The doctors told me that I would have to go on metformin. Sorry, not the metformin, insulin. I was already on six 500 mg metformins a day at that point, and they couldn't do anything more with that oral medication, and I had to go. And that was to me my eye opener. And other things also happened at the time, and yes, there was self-experimentation, reading, understanding, and came across something that worked for me and worked very well, in fact. And so, 5 years now, I've almost completely reversed my diabetes.
Wow.
I'm
That's
still,
amazing.
yep. Now I'm in on very basic, just one metformin a day as a preventive. Uh, in my lipid and
Yeah.
blood work seems to be pretty close to being on track.
Yeah. And if you see this whole trend with diabetics, I mean, I do work with three diabetologists,
Yeah,
and when they told me about their patients, the patients start coming to them with one metformin. And then after a month or two, they go on two.
Yes,
And then the dose goes on increasing.
absolutely. Same thing with
Yeah,
me.
yeah,
And the other part of this was the doctors almost have a fatalistic outlook to this. They say, okay, there's no coming back.
there's no, yeah,
All we can do is delay the increase of dosage.
yeah,
Eventually, you're going to be on insulin.
yeah,
Eventually, you're going to land up with.
yeah,
So it is almost like a done thing
yeah,
that there's no way out of this.
yeah,
The only thing we can do is manage it well
yeah,
and try to extend uh, the increase of medication.
yeah.
Yeah.
And this reversal phase which we are going through right now,
Yes.
which is going from six metformins to one. I mean, how did this happen? Can you tell us more about the changes you made in your
E-
insulin?
Yes. So yeah, this was in 2014. I was between contracts. I do private consultancy, and it's Christmas time. Normally, there's not much work, so it did give me that opportunity to go back and look at this myself. So it had come to a point when doctor said, look, you have to go on insulin. We can't control your blood sugar, and we can't let it be as it is. So we have to make a call. And that was my awakening call. I mean, I shook me. That really shook me. And I told doctors, look, just give me a few months. I just want to understand what I'm going in for. And so that's when I started reading about the different things I could do. I didn't think about reversing diabetes. I didn't believe that that was possible. But I was trying to say, okay, how long can I delay ultimately going on into insulin?
Yeah.
And that's when I started reading about this, and I came across some of these uh, testimonials and research that says that actually not only can diabetes be stopped where it is, it can actually be reversed. And nobody had told me about that. So it was then I followed different leads and tried to understand what was going on there, and then I self-experimented. So it took me a month, when that's when I came across the ketogenic diet. It wasn't a fad then; it was pretty much in its.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is you were talking about how many years back?
This is 2014.
Oh, 2014. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So and I still remember I had quite serious conversation with a doctor friend of mine. This was when I was said I'm going to try this, and she warned me against it. She's saying it's dangerous. There's ketoacidosis that can take place,
Correct.
and you're doing something crazy. I also at that time came across the concept of eating within a small window, which I guess we call intermittent fasting. But again, uh, she said this is absolutely nothing. This is absolutely wrong. It's not something diabetics should do. We should be having small meals, try to prevent your insulin, your sugar loads. But there was no concept of actually doing away with carbohydrates. That's unthinkable.
Yeah.
So when I started doing this, and I didn't tell my doctor at that time, and I started changing my lifestyle, and I checked I was monitoring my blood sugar. I had a meter, and it started coming down. It started coming down so drastically that I started reducing my medication.
Yeah.
And again, without doctor's
And not
advice.
only the fasting, but I guess the PP also, the
Everything,
postprandial. Yeah.
everything, and in New Zealand they look after us quite well, and we have uh, cyclic medical checks and blood tests and stuff. So doctor wanted me to do another check in 3 months' time from the time he actually told me, look, this is looking bad.
Yeah.
So I had 3 months before I went for my next check. But I had the blood glucose monitor, so I could actually see what is happening on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I also got myself some keto sticks, so I could actually monitor whether whether I was actually going into ketosis and all. I was absolutely amazed at the results. So by the time I went for my next blood test, my blood sugar was normal.
Oh.
I didn't tell my doctor that I'd actually reduced my metformin.
Oh.
So he was like, oh, great, I mean, but
So he thought it's the metformins that are doing the
yeah,
work.
yeah, and like you just felt okay, you've done a few changes. Maybe your metformin is now working, so we can delay going into insulin.
Yeah.
What he didn't know was actually I had gone started going back on my metformin and still maintaining a normal blood profile.
Okay.
And when I finally did tell him, he and this is something which amazes me. I mean, as a medical, as a doctor, I would expect him to say, "Wow, how did this happen? What did you do?" On the other, but it was just the opposite. You're saying, you're trying something very dangerous. You're trying to a self experiment. This has never been done. And I told him that's when I finally told him. I said, "Look, I'm not only it's not only normal because of my interventions. I'm actually started reducing my medication." And he was furious. "Oh, you shouldn't be doing that without our instructions." And I said, "Doctor, but shouldn't you be curious to know why and how this is happening? What have I done that has actually made this? There's just some simple interventions." Anyway, so he finally had to, because he says, "I can't reduce your a diabetic medication in the system because that's the government system. I've never done this before." So it was. I said, "Look, if you give me, if you, absolutely saying no, I can't. How can I prescribe you less than what always been giving you? Yeah, but I said, if you give it to me, I'm just going to throw it out because I'm serious. I don't take it." It took another 6 months and two more lab checks before doctor finally accepted. So right now in New Zealand, I'm officially on one metformin from six. So that's on record.
That's a huge, that's a huge, achievement.
Yes. No, I was pretty relieved that I didn't have to go to the next step in diabetes.
Okay.
But what saddens me is that we still don't have this information going out.
Yeah.
The medical profession seems to be still. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, this still seems to be new
yeah,
to doctors.
but why? And I think my question is why aren't they when they see an actual case?
Yeah.
Why aren't they interested in actually
Yeah.
saying, "Look, this works"?
Yeah.
But no.
Fortunately, I mean, when we started the work,
Hmm.
I started getting a lot of resistance from doctors. But with that resistance, I always made it a point to go and meet the doctor and to try to explain them
Yeah.
this concept about how reduction of carbohydrates would lead to better lifestyle changes.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, I'm very proud to tell that we have got around 7 doctors who have, I mean, who not only accept this kind of lifestyle,
Hmm.
but have made these changes in their lifestyle as well.
Wow.
So they themselves are practicing this and they have understood it and they're doing a lot of reading. And whenever we get, diabetics, patients who have diabetes, it goes in sync with the doctor where as the blood sugar starts dropping down, the metformins or the medications also go down. So I'm very fortunate to have, open-minded doctors like that. It was very difficult to find them, very difficult. Most of the doctors denied the whole research paper itself, but it's amazing to have.
Yes, I mean, it's quite funny because if you see from in New Zealand, after you finish your blood test,
Yeah.
you get a printout of with your ranges.
Okay.
Under my because my blood sugar was my HbA1c was quite high,
Yeah.
and there was such a sudden drop
Yeah.
that there was a cautionary note below.
Oh.
If the patient is on insulin, please warn them about falling,
Falling hypoglycemic.
getting hypoglycemic.
Hypoglycemic. Yeah.
It is on my report. So obviously the system doesn't believe that
This can
that this
be
can be done.
naturally done.
And so the fact that my blood was normal,
Yeah.
they just assumed that
Yeah.
I was on insulin.
Oh.
So that was it was quite a
Quite a,
uh,
yeah.
yeah.
Quite a shocking this
Yeah, so
report.
it still comes. Every one of my reports, and I can show you where it just gives a warning to the patient,
Yeah.
that just so it's just assuming that you are on insulin.
Yeah.
And here this is now my how many years? Almost 5 6 years,
6 years now.
and never look back.
Great, great. And I mean, when you were talking, you also told me about the fasting theory which you've done. I mean, you've done a 7-day fast.
Yes.
And a warning to all the viewers here: this is not starving. This is planned intermittent fasting. and this is done in a planned fashion where the most important part in fasting is, I guess, the feeding phase,
Yes.
as in what you eat. So, could you tell us more about that?
Yes. So from intermittent fasting, I came across uh, Dr. Jason Fung, is it?
Yeah, Jason Fung.
Fung,
Yeah,
yeah, Fung, yeah. So
he's a Japanese doctor.
yes.
Yeah.
So he's basically I don't know the medical word for kidney doctors that are specializing
Into
in yeah.
renal specialty.
So he saw a lot of kidney failures and he found a lot of diabetics uh,
Yeah.
came finally ended up with kidney failure.
Yeah.
So that was from where he came from, and that he came into diabetics and he said, look, if I can do something about diabetes, and then he started looking at intermittent fasting. I think then he expanded that.
Mm.
He studied fasting itself
Mm.
as a way to improve health.
Yeah.
And he's written this wonderful book, and that's so I came across his works and I started reading about him, and then I finally read his book, and
The
really
obesity
inspired.
code.
No, not the Guide to Fasting or
Guide to
something. Yeah, yeah,
fasting.
yeah, yeah. That was his book.
Yeah.
And so that was good because he gives you a good information how to actually start your fast, how to condition yourself, what to expect when you fast,
Yeah.
and how to break the fast when you.
Mm.
So with that, I started with just a day, then I went on to 2 days every 2 months or something. Then I went to 3 days, and then being ketogenic, it becomes much easier to fast
Correct.
because your ketones are, your hunger pangs are not as strong as
Correct.
when you are
The
when you're
ketones
in a
take
carb.
care of it. I mean,
Yeah.
leucine also gets high.
Yes.
So that.
Anyway, I don't. So now I do 7 days. So probably every 6 months.
Okay.
7 days just on water and maybe a cup or two of coffee,
Okay.
and fantastic results.
Yeah.
At the end of those 7 days of
7 days.
fast, you can actually, if I go and check my
Blood sugars
blood sugars and everything else, your
gone down.
BP and everything else, it's almost
That's amazing.
it's incredible.
Because many people would think that 7-day fast would be like a big energy crash. I
Yeah.
mean, what I guess is that because I have not done a 7-day fast, but when I did long fast, my energy started going higher and higher
Mm.
as the fast went longer and longer.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people stop after 2 days or one or 2 days.
Yeah,
Actually, that's the most difficult part.
yeah,
If you just hang on there and you come into your third day,
yeah,
that's when you start humming and you're talking about energy levels, even your clarity, mental clarity.
yeah.
I mean, you can we know by history a lot of the ancient thinkers
Correct.
used to fast just to improve their clarity.
Exactly. That's
So
amazing.
fasting is beneficial in so many ways. I used fasting very much for managing my diabetes initially, but I was glad to hear that actually I was getting other benefits from fasting.
Great. Super. Amazing.
Yeah.
And now with this whole, I mean, diabetes being has become an epidemic. I mean, uh, for any disease to qualify as an epidemic, I think that maybe 3 to 5% of the population of the country has to be affected. But if you look at the numbers with diabetes, it's more than 30%
Wow.
people that they have been affected
That's a lot.
globally.
Mm.
And if you look at India, I mean, they've projected. I mean, WHO has projected more than 80 million diabetics by the year 2020.
Yeah,
So
that's a lot.
I mean, these numbers are very shocking. And what's more shocking is that people are very normal with this.
Yeah, it's very blasé.
Yeah, it's very blasé. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
become like a cult, a common thing that okay, I have diabetes, but I'll just take my pill and I'll eat whatever I want.
yeah,
What are your thoughts on people being just okay and not doing anything about it?
yeah. One thing which was first-hand witness to the devastation of diabetes is my dad. My dad died of diabetes.
Oh, sorry.
He had to have his leg amputated twice. First his toes,
Oh,
and then again the gangrene formed, and finally they took off his, just below his knee,
oh,
and then very soon after that he finally succumbed to uh, poisoning.
mm,
But so, and my all my uncles were diabetics,
mm, Oh, so there was
So,
always
there was
genetic
a big
variability.
thing. That's the problem. Okay? Everyone said, look, it's in your family, it's in your genes, it's inevitable. You're going to get it. And so it's amazing that, you could act and I realized that that's when I read about genetics and epigenetics. And so I realized, it's the expression of your genes. Yes, maybe my family were predisposed to diabetes, but that doesn't mean it's a death note.
Yeah.
Uh, if you prevent the expression of those negative genes,
Genes, yeah.
you can live a normal life. You have to be careful. For me, I know I am, as long as I'm in ketosis, as long as I'm on a ketogenic diet, I'm good.
Yeah.
But sometimes I have a cheat
Yeah.
meal, some boom, that's it, back again.
Correct.
So I'm fully aware that but I'm really worried that people take it so lightly because I've seen firsthand what the impacts of diabetes and taking medication, especially diabetic medication, and heavy doses of insulin is definitely not a good way to go.
Yeah.
When there is such a simple way to actually reverse that,
Yeah.
people
And
want to have their cake and eat it too,
correct.
and unfortunately, it's not so. You pay the price.
Correct. Yeah. And I mean, if these people actually take their diabetes seriously
Absolutely.
and start, reducing the damage-causing carbohydrates, then they would not only get their medications down, but also it has a huge impact on your life and your health, other than diabetes, I mean. And those are some parameters I would like to talk to you about,
Mm.
where you had an offshoots of this. And
Yes. So I had a couple of things that went wrong almost in the same period.
yeah.
But because diabetes was my main concern, the others I was living with. But basically, I had some kind of IBS, irritable bowel syndrome.
Yeah.
At one point, doctors thought there was internal bleeding, and I had to go through a endoscopy and a colonoscopy
Oh,
to determine whether there was, I had pretty bad, digestive system. I had even a low iron count, hemoglobin count.
oh.
Everything was indicating that I was hemorrhaging somewhere, but there was no real reason for it.
So this was before you started on the right
Yes,
track.
but that seemed to you could still do your daily work.
Yeah.
You could do your okay. You have to go a couple of more times to the toilet and stuff.
Correct.
But it it was there. But the strange thing is when I started into this, I found that there was other benefits. And looking back, suddenly you realize how many different areas this regime had helped.
Yeah.
And there's another aspect which, while reading about this, and that was about gut health.
Mm.
So I started looking at that. I started using fermented vegetables, sauerkraut,
Yeah.
kefir,
Yeah.
and kombucha, and all these different ways of getting good bacteria into my system. That with fasting, with the ketogenic diet, that combination was absolutely, spot on.
Oh, and I mean, thank you for getting this amazing cultured yogurt called as kefir
Yes.
here in India.
Ah, right.
And shout out to my friend Anshu because he's actually got the
Yep.
cultured yogurt now here in India,
Yes.
and it's a rare one, right? I mean,
It is. I mean, look, kefir now is available commercially. It's a bit expensive if you buy it off. The good thing with this is so beneficial, and it grows. So you can actually farm
yeah.
kefir.
Last thing I wanted to talk about is this whole resistance that's there with people when they start getting on a diet. So this whole willpower that's needed to control these sugar cravings, to control these sugar panics.
Yeah.
And I mean, I meet many people, and when I explain them the right things, they know that okay, this is something that I need to follow. But then they come up with excuses saying that oh, I don't have this willpower and to control myself from eating that sugar.
Yeah. So it brings back a little video that somebody showed us. This was back in 2007 or something, quite and even before I was too worried about diabetes. But there was a chiropractor friend of ours who came across the video by Dr. James Chestnut. And he talked about this concept of willpower and why willpower in diet sometimes doesn't work. Willpower is good in the interim to help you get started, but you can't sustain everything on willpower. So with willpower comes the second bit of willpower is the willpower helps you to get started and try to hold you from actually doing things which are wrong. But I think it's the knowledge and believing, understanding why you're doing this, going in depth, reading about this. So it's me telling you, okay, you don't do this. You're just listening to me and using your willpower not to do it. And me telling you, look, read about this, understand why I'm telling you this. And when people actually understand, then willpower will get them started. But what will sustain them is their understanding and the knowledge and believing that if they do something different, it's going to have detrimental effects. So that's to me that's people should not rely on willpower in a long term. They should take the effort to actually understand why this is being said.
This is fantastic.
Yeah.
And if you look at what we're doing at HealthSpan, so the word HealthSpan means that if you have a lifespan of 80, 85, you should live, I mean, your health span should be equal to your lifespan.
Yes.
So your last day of your life has to be as healthy as possible and the healthiest day in your life. So when we start people on a program, we first educate them about the the science and not we don't never ask them to blindly follow a plan
Yes.
because then they believe in us. So what we want is them to believe in science rather than believing in a diet. So if they
That's a good
understand
approach.
science, then it becomes all easy to
Yes.
unfold the mysteries.
Yes. Look, if you and I'll just give an example of a bar of chocolate. You know, you keep a bar of chocolate beside someone and says, "No, I know you like chocolate, but use your willpower and keep away from it." And it's possible, 1, 2 days, 3 days. But there's going to be a time when they're low, when they're, when they're, something is upsetting them, stressed, and they'll go for it.
Yeah.
Now, if I take that bar of chocolate, dip it in cyanide, and put it out there and say, "Look, you take a bite, you'll die." You don't even feel tempted.
Yeah.
Now, what's changed? In the first thing you just nobody explained to you. You just say, "I'm keeping that chocolate, uh, and just stay away. Use your willpower." If I tell you eating that chocolate all the time is going to poison you, and if you can understand that it is cyanide is probably an extreme example, but if you understand the damage it does, then you don't have to use willpower to stop you from doing that. To, understanding that's so important to actually educate yourself. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. And to end with this, I mean, what is your message to the youth and to the people who are diabetic watching this video?
Ah. Look, I'm 66, and if someone had told me when I was 45 and when I or 47 or 48 when I first got my first pre-diabetes that you actually you're doing something wrong and explained to me, showed me something, uh, I would probably have been in a better position. Now what I've done is I've done a repair job. I can see my pancreas is not going to be 100% what it was. I'm still trying for that.
Yeah.
Well, I think for young people is these are certain things we have learned by actually falling in the pits
Yeah.
and making it. One of the things is listen to young people is take heed. Listen to people who have gone through. Don't go on fads and gimmicks.
Yeah.
People trying to uh, give these wonder things without proper understanding and teaching.
Understanding.
And talk when you see senior people
Yeah.
who have gone through their lives
Yeah.
and who have
Fall into the
come in
pits.
and come out of it.
Come out.
Listen, and I think self-experimentation is the other thing I would like to say to youth. Experiment with yourselves. Just I'm not saying don't trust the doctor. Doctors are great, And in case of acute illnesses and stuff, they are absolutely are irreplaceable. But in chronic cases, medical system has failed all over the world. We have not managed to control the cancers, the heart, the diabetes. Nothing has actually, with all our modern medicine, all we can do is manage it. So there are ways. What my message to youngsters: look around. There are healthier ways. There are better ways. Simple, straightforward, basic principles, first principles, and challenge as well. Challenge the norms, and yep, there's definitely a simpler, better way of living your life. Oh, my pleasure. Yep.